And for us here at home in Barbados, during this period, we watched and tracked the development of the second tropical depression for this Atlantic hurricane season, as it went from a depression to being the second named storm, to being a hurricane, to becoming the most powerful weather system in history to develop in the month of June. The storm went from a Category 2 hurricane to Category 3 with a projection for it to be Category 4 strength before the eye passed to the south of Barbados. We knew in Barbados that we were going to be seriously affected. It was simply a matter of when and how hard. The context of our experience, Mr. Speaker, must be considered against the fact that 12 days ago, almost all models and projections were pointing to a near direct hit on Barbados. And it was literally within the last 72 hours before impact that the system jogged or wobbled twice to take its track further south away from Barbados. Instead, it set on course for Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. At this point, Mr. Speaker, I wish to pause and thank the Barbados Meteorological Services for its sterling work over the last few years, and particularly in its monitoring of Hurricane Beryl. We all know the Director Sabu Bess, who has undertaken much innovation and led the Met Office with distinction. Behind the scenes, he's ably supported by a strong team of meteorologists and administrative and support personnel who are the lifeblood of the department. What the majority of Barbadians do not know is that we were receiving reports from the Met Service literally every hour over the 48 hours preceding the arrival of the storm, and almost every 15 minutes during the actual passage. This level of commitment and dedication is to be appreciated and applauded, and I wish the record of this Parliament to reflect our appreciation. The National Emergency Operations Centre was stood up on the night of Sunday, the 30th of June, 2024, to manage the national response to the passage of Beryl before the effective national shutdown, and the NEOC remained in place until the post-event situation was stabilized and under control. A lot of people don't know what the NEOC is and what it does. The NEOC comprises representatives from key organizations in Barbados, both governmental and private sector. Its task is to receive all information and reports, collate the information, and then make the decisions that keep this country safe. The organizations that were represented in the NEOC during the passage of Beryl were the Ministry of Home Affairs and Information, the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, the Barbados Police Service, the Department of Emergency Management, the Barbados Fire Service, the Barbados Statistical Service, the National Housing Corporation, the Barbados Defense Force, the Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs and the Welfare Department, Barbados Light and Power, Barbados National Oil Company Limited, National Petroleum Corporation, Ministry of Transport and Works, the Barbados Meteorological Service, Barbados Government Information Service, the Ministry of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology, the Ministry of Housing and Lands, Barbados Red Cross, Ministry of Health and Wellness, the Barbados Water Authority, the District Emergency Organizations, the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport, the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, and the Barbados Citizen Band Radio Association. I wish to thank all who were present at the NEOC, and indeed all essential workers who were called out on duty during the passage of Hurricane Beryl. All who left their families, their spouses, their children, their parents, and other loved ones at home to perform their national duty for as long as it took for the all-clear to be given. We appreciate it is not easy focusing on the national response and saving lives, while in many instances not knowing what is happening at your own home. On behalf of the government, I would like to thank yet again all the essential personnel for the sacrifices that they have made and continue to make in the name of national service. Between the night of 30th June and the first 12 hours of 1st of July, Barbadians watched and felt the passage of Hurricane Beryl as it tracked towards Barbados from an area to the southeast of the island. As was noted at the time, Beryl was the first hurricane to form in the Atlantic this early in the hurricane season. Clearly, our adage, June too soon, July stand by, no longer reflects our reality. Not only that, but the fact that Beryl intensified rapidly to Category 3 by the time the eye passed to the south of Barbados, before strengthening to Category 4 hours after, and then to a Category 5 hurricane on the 2nd of July 2024 was also a new phenomenon. This clearly highlights the deleterious effects of the climate crisis. Beryl became the earliest Category 5 in the Atlantic on record, and is only the second Category 5 hurricane to occur in July, after Hurricane Emily in 2005. And this was according to the National Hurricane Center. And please note, Beryl beat Emily's record by more than 2 weeks. At maximum strength, Beryl became the strongest July Atlantic hurricane on record, with winds of 166 miles per hour. This is exceptionally early for a major hurricane. And by major hurricanes, we define those as Category 3 or above. So this is exceptionally early for a major hurricane, let alone for a Category 5 to develop. On average, the first major hurricane does not form until around early September. These statistics have struck scientists on just how exceptional Beryl has been this early in the season. Meteorologists and scientists have indicated that the development of hurricanes is directly linked to the temperature of the ocean. And sir, I ask you to take note for the record. The temperature of the Atlantic Ocean is breaking all records. All records. I must say one final thing in relation to the record-breaking Hurricane Beryl. In speaking to fisher folk and those who make their living from the sea or along the coast, never in living memory has anyone seen sea swells like those which pounded the south coast and decimated much of the west coast. Even infrastructure designed decades ago to withstand severe weather systems proved little match for the destructive swells of Hurricane Beryl. One only need consider the reports of damage to the Bridgetown Port, Bridgetown Fisheries Complex, and the boats sheltering there, and the damage seen on the south and west coast to understand the scale of the impact on Barbados and our economy. And with all this, it must be borne in mind that Barbados did not experience the actual hurricane force winds associated with Beryl. It is important to state all these facts because across the world, the vulnerable small island developing states and indeed our own Prime Minister have been calling the attention of the world to the fact that we, as the least of the polluters, are bearing the disproportionate brunt of the climate crisis. Now, Mr. Speaker, I turn to the actual on-the-ground report from the passage of Beryl. Representatives from the public and private sector forming the National Emergency Operations Center gathered at the Department of Emergency Management from 30th of June to monitor the hurricane, assess reported impacts, and consider potential ones, all with the aim of increasing our ability to mount responses as quickly as possible to the various events and situations. The affiliated Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, SEDEMA, also supported our efforts. The Hurricane Watch was issued by the BMS, that's Barbados Meteorological Services. The Hurricane Watch was issued by the BMS on Saturday, 29th of June, 2024 at 5 a.m., and this was upgraded to a hurricane warning at 5 p.m. on the same day. The BMS discontinued the warning on Monday, July 1st, 2024 at 2 p.m. At 2:05 p.m. on July 1st, 2024, the all-clear was given, and the public was advised to exercise caution as they moved around to check on their homes and businesses. It was also announced that schools would remain closed on Tuesday, July 3rd, and Wednesday, July 4th, 2024. The NUSC remained fully operational until its eventual deactivation at 8:42 p.m. on July 1st. With respect to the impact, sir, given that Hurricane Beryl was slated to directly impact Barbados as a Category 2 storm, it was expected that there could be serious damage to the island. Although Beryl strengthened to Category 3 hurricane before passing to the south of Barbados, we remained outside its range of sustained hurricane force winds. Thankfully, we had no reported loss of life from the hurricane. I think it is safe to say that the damage on land was minimal in the wider scheme of things. This is not meant to minimize the 261 incident reports that were received on July 1st, 2024, which included damage to roofs or houses, fallen trees, damage to our utilities, or any other type of adverse impact. According to the Damage Assessment and Needs Analysis Committee, 45 reports of house damage were received by the NUSC on Monday, July 1st, 2024, as follows: St. George 5, St. Thomas 4, St. James 1, St. John 3, St. Michael 18, St. Philip 3, Christchurch 11. Teams of damage assessors comprising persons from Welfare Department, Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs, the district emergency organizations, and the National Housing Corporation were deployed to the areas. In several instances, however, assessors were unable to locate some of the persons on the list. Since 1st July, information has been continually gathered and analyzed by the agencies as the damage assessment and needs analysis exercise continues and is still ongoing, all with the aim of obtaining comprehensive understanding of the impact of Hurricane Beryl on our country. I take this opportunity now to provide a synopsis of the impacts across the different sectors. Impact on the coastal areas and the fisheries and boating sectors. With the passage of the hurricane to the south of Barbados, it meant that the south coast was particularly exposed. And indeed, in our original assessments, we noted that the coastal area along part of Highway 7 suffered extreme effects of storm surges that left at least 2 areas impassable. Other areas in the coastline in the northwest, such as Speightstown, also recorded damage from the storm surge. The images of destruction on the south coast could not prepare us, however, for the destruction wrought on the fisheries sector and the livelihood of the men, women, and families who practice their craft to earn a decent living, as well as those who provide food for the rest of us, who have not a thought of venturing into those potentially treacherous waters. The images, horrendous as they were, provided no match to the actual lived experience of the devastation at the Bridgetown Fisheries Complex. Our hearts go out to all those impacted and who now face the daunting task of putting their lives back on track. These effects are not only financial, but social and psychological. As of July 5th, 2024, a total of 209 boats were affected, directly impacting 560 persons associated with these vessels. At the time of this report, 200 boats were recorded as having received some form of damage to their structure, and 9 boats were confirmed by surveyors as total losses in the BFC. Prior to the passing of Hurricane Beryl, approximately 312 registered boats were active across the island for 2024, and this is based on information from the data collectors, with the Bridgetown Fisheries Complex accounting for 175 of these vessels and Oistins 21. On average, from January to May this year, the BFC has contributed 82.3% to the total landings, and Oistins has contributed 9.3%. Therefore, landings can be expected to be significantly impacted. Currently, the number of boats docked in the BFC when Beryl struck is unclear, as boats from other landing sites also docked there during the passage of the hurricane. Please note that approximately 10 to 15 boats from Oistins sheltered in the BFC, which is around half of their 21-boat fishing fleet. We are at the end of the fishing season, so it's likely that fish landings would have decreased for the large pelagic species, but it is estimated that it is not yet clear how long it will take to get half of our fleet back into operation. So we're not even talking about getting the whole fleet back in. We're aiming at trying to get half of the fleet back into operation. We will keep the Honourable House of Assembly and the public updated on this matter, and once we have clarity on the scale and details of the damage, we'll report back, and also the consequential repairs or replacements necessary. The total number of boats affected by Hurricane Beryl, damaged or totally lost, as indicated earlier, was 209. Ice boats stand as the most affected at 108, longliners follow at 32, and Moses, day boats, launches, and sports fishing vessels number 37, 17, 15, and 1, respectively. There was one boat that its type remained unidentified. What is worthy of note, Mr. Speaker, is the fact that we have been informed that 90% of the affected boats were uninsured. I say that again. Of all the statistics that I gave you, sir, one of the most striking is that of the affected boats, 90% of them were uninsured. This, of course, has consequences for the government. Boat removal to date. As of July 7, 2024, 114 boats were removed from the BFC. Vessels were hauled out by companies that included Hines Transport Services, Marenco Marine Limited, and Crane Equipment Limited. 13 boats were able to travel out on their own to the careenage. The hauled out boats are temporarily being housed at lots near to Bico Limited, the Barbados Coast Guard, and Kensington Mall, and a lot near Spring Garden Highway at Indian Ground. 29 boats were scheduled to be lifted out on July 8th and 9th, 2024. Yesterday, July 8th, 2024, the Barbados Defense Force, Marenco, Barnufo, and Clean Up Barbados were scheduled to commence cleaning the debris from the water, and I understand that they have started. We've been hearing a lot, in particular from the Honourable Member for St. Michael's South, about fish aggregating devices, FADs, that were installed to assist fishermen by attracting fish to a particular location. These also sustain significant damage, with FADs 1 and 2 being moved by the swells from the original and charted location, and FADs 4 and 5 being lost entirely. While longer-term solutions are sought to provide more resilient infrastructure for the fisheries sector, in the face of increasing vagaries associated with the climate crisis, I can give the assurance that everything will be done to provide relief in the short term to the hundreds of persons directly affected by these events. Following the damage assessments undertaken by the relevant departments, such as the Fisheries Department, the Prime Minister on Friday, 5th of July, 2024, announced a suite of measures that will be put in place to assist fisher folk. These include capitalizing the Fisheries Benevolent Fund with a humanitarian donation of $250,000 from the Latin American Development Bank, otherwise referred to as CAF, to the government of Barbados, and providing grants of up to 25% of the relevant costs to assist in the replacement or repair of fishing boats. The Prime Minister has also given instructions to work with the financial institutions to establish and fund a 30-year fisheries revolving fund that will be available to help fishermen finance any new boats and to tackle existing debt where necessary and possible. The damage has been far more severe than initially thought, because not only was the fishery sector impacted, but the coastal infrastructure took a severe beating, with almost all of the beaches on the West Coast having been decimated. The Bridgetown Fishing Harbour had a third of its breakwater destroyed, and the jetty and oistins received substantial damage, with half of the privately owned ice jetty being destroyed. The damage to the Coast Guard, Paynes Bay Fishing Market, and other private facilities, from hotels to restaurants to private properties, is still being assessed. Information received from the Barbados Port Inc. indicates that there was negligible damage to the cargo terminals. On the other hand, the Bridgetown Cruise Passenger Terminal sustained significant damage due to storm surge. Of the 66 businesses there, 41 have been impacted by water and debris. 19 duty-free shops on the interior of the terminal. 2 pushcart kiosks on the interior, 19 courtyard shops, and a lone restaurant and bar. The terminal tour bays on the exterior flooded with water and debris, and the taxi dispatch center has been extensively damaged and will have to be demolished. In addition, the newly refurbished signal station was damaged by storm surge. It should be noted that this is the same Bridgetown port which has withstood many serious storms, and this also proved inadequate at being able to prevent the storm surge from causing the sinking of some of the more well-known pleasure vessels, to wit, the Jolly Roger and the Dream Chaser. Utilities. I now turn to one of the more critical areas for us. The performance of utilities is of utmost importance as it affects the way in which we can continue our lives during and post-hurricane impact. There's a high interdependency between the two main utilities, water and electricity. With respect to the Barbados Water Authority, the Emergency Operations Group, EOG, comprising departmental representatives, was stood up on Saturday, 29th of June, 2024, to commence preparations for the weather system forecasted to impact the country. The Hurricane Preparedness Committee, the HPC, convened a meeting to initiate preparations for the weather system forecasted to impact the island. The procedures for securing facilities, computer equipment, and data at offices were completed by staff as the system was approaching over the weekend. Portable weather pumping stations were taken offline on a phased basis to safeguard pumps and electronic equipment through a manual process which commenced at 1930 hours on the 30th of June, 2024. This process was completed at 22:58 hours, with the major production stations being done last. The wastewater plants, lift stations, and temporary marine outfall were prepared for continuous operations during the event, and emergency generators were delivered to Aquatic Gap River Road lift stations and the Barbados South Coast treatment plant. The Barbados Sewage Treatment Plant. Water tanker service was activated to provide service to customers in areas experiencing outages. The service was terminated at 16:30 hours, and tankers were filled with water and refueled. Heavy equipment and vehicles were transported from the laydown sites in the north to the safe area at the Bell and Pine headquarters. All lift stations on the South Coast network were visited. There were no signs that any extraneous water intrusion, perceived or actualized, had in any way negatively affected the station's pumping operations. Levels at all but one station sump were normal. At that one location, Palm Beach, the high sump level was capably managed by the two installed pumps. As at 11:30 p.m. on July 1st, 2024, the Barbados Water Authority had restored production capacity to 86.2%. Facilities hindering 100% capacity at the time included Groves. The station was pumping at 50% after an error on display prevented startup of the boosters. Work continued to get the plant to 100%. Groves is responsible for supplying water to Haggett's, Mount Pleasant, Ozone, and Vineyard. Sweet Vale borehole number 2. Moisture entered the control panel, and the station was offline with works continuing. The Ionics desalination plant was operating at 2/3 capacity, with no production from the new section of the plant because voltage had not stabilized enough to start that section. The Bowmanston station was operating at 100%. However, it was on generation power until power from the Barbados Land and Power Company had been restored. As at 6:00 p.m., July 4th, 2024, the Barbados Water Authority had restored production capacity to 98%, and this water was being pumped into the associated distribution systems. By 10 p.m., all of the pumping stations operating were using utility power, and they continue to do so. There were still, at that time, some pockets in the distribution system where customers experienced low pressure and outages. This was mostly due, we are informed, to the high demand for water and the length of time it takes to refill the reservoirs. Customers in the affected areas have been assisted by water tankers. Let us use this occasion, and I say this one slowly. Let us please use this occasion to reinforce among our families and our communities the need for us to heed the advice to store 5 gallons of water per day for at least 5 days. So it is 5 gallons of water per person per day for at least 5 days while we confront other systems this season and in future years. The sewage outfall pipes. Another area that has engaged the attention of the Barbados Water Authority since the passage of the hurricane is the sewage outfall pipes at Worthing. Following the passage of Beryl, the BWA requested that divers go in as soon as the seas allowed them to safely do so. On the same morning that they were proceeding with the inspection, the BWA received a call about pipes floating in the sea off Worthing. Following an inspection, the divers reported that the anchor blocks were displaced along a section of the 8-inch sewage outfall, which was severed just south of the reef on the section of pipeline between the reef and the diffuser end of the sewage outfall pipelines. The diffuser end is the end it comes out at. The breakage is approximately 400 to 500 meters offshore. The divers also reported that the anchor blocks along the alternate 12-inch pipeline had been displaced, causing a section of this pipeline to float just south of the reef to the diffuser section, but that this 12-inch pipeline was still intact. The use of the 8-inch outfall has been halted and discharge routed solely through the intact 12-inch outfall. The built-in redundancy has ensured that the operations of the plant can continue while the necessary repairs are effected. The BWA has the necessary pipes and fittings and anchor blocks on hand to effect swift repairs, and the process has commenced. I am advised, sir, I was literally advised as I was about to speak that the 12-inch pipe has been re-anchored to the ground, is being secured back to the ground, and we're, the seabed, and we're in the process of shoring up the anchor blocks on it, but it is back now into the position it's supposed to be in. What I will say, sir, and I'm going off script slightly. I remember when we were doing these works to get the South Coast Sewage Plant back up and running. And at the time, I was the minister responsible for the Water Authority. We took the decision to build 2 outfalls. Not 1, but 2. Because where we were putting them, they were supposed to be temporary, there was some contemplation that one may be affected, or the other may be affected in an extreme weather event. Well, this was as extreme a weather event, sir, as we could have contemplated. When we took the decision to build any redundancy, we were lambasted up and down about wasting money and spending twice when you should only spend once. And we also took the decision at that point in time to order excess pipes in case one of the sections were damaged. We would not then have to procure the pipes, but we'd have them on hand. Sir, the contingency arrangements and the built-in redundancy have proved their worth. We were able, with the broken 8-inch pipe, to reroute through the alternate, the redundant 12-inch pipe, to completely continue the normal operations while we fix the 8-inch pipe, so that the operations at the South Coast Sewage Plant are not affected at all. So for those who are asking, do we expect to see sewage back up on the streets of Barbados again? No, not under our watch. I will say, sir, that in the interest of public safety, it was recommended that the Worthing Beach be closed immediately, obviously, and remain closed until testing of the water confirms that it's safe. The repairs to the 8-inch outfall are dependent on the weather and the sea conditions, but it's expected this may take approximately 8 weeks if there are no major disruptions. Sir, with respect to Barbados Light and Power Company, the Barbados Light and Power's grid performed well, with protective systems operating to isolate impacted areas to protect the safety of customers, employees, and the network. The first outage was recorded around 2 a.m. on July 1st, and during the passage of the system, 13 of the 61 feeders across the island tripped or were manually taken out of service due to weather conditions. After the operational all-clear was given at around 11 a.m. on July 1st, 2024, field teams assessed the grid and restoration commenced. Approximately 25% or 35,000 customers were without supply at the start of the restoration. At 7 a.m. on July 2nd, 2024, there were approximately 3% or 4,700 customers without supply. And by 7 a.m. on July 3rd, 2024, that was further reduced to 0.25 of 1%, or 343 customers without supply. As of July 5th, 2024, no customers were without supply. During the event, most of the outages were related to tree contacts with electrical infrastructure, broken conductors and wires coming off insulators. There were fewer than 15 damaged poles or blown fuses. The natural gas supply was maintained throughout the passage of Beryl, and the Natural Petroleum Corporation has reported that there were no reports of low gas pressures. While noting that there were a few calls from the public, they were able to respond and solve the situations. Neither the Barbados National Oil Company Limited nor the Barbados National Terminal Company Limited experienced significant damage from the passage of Hurricane Beryl. Crude and natural gas production from the oil field continued unaffected for the duration of the storm, as did production from the gas plant, with the transmission pressure supplied to the National Petroleum Corporation never dipping below 200 psi for the duration of the event. The government's engineering electrical department suffered no structural damage to any of its buildings, and their maintenance crews were deployed for normal routine maintenance calls and repair work. The department continued to work with the utility to refine its assessment framework and coordination with the utility in response to those instances that required an electrical inspection before services could be restored. The health sector, sir. Prior to impact, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, in addition to having a representative place at the NEOC, at the DEM, stood up its Health Emergency Operations Center to coordinate the health sector response to the system and activated its disaster management plans. During the storm, the sector's residential facilities remained open. The polyclinics, Ministry of Health and Wellness headquarters, and other units were closed. The QEH relayed that there were no issues during impact and up to present. There were minor issues at the St. Philip District Hospital, the Geriatric Hospital, and the Psychiatric Hospital, and there were no issues at the St. Lucie District Hospital. Once the all-clear was given on July 1st, 2024, assessments were made to the polyclinics and other facilities, including the Barbados Drug Service, Administration Office and storage sites, the Best Dos Santos Laboratory, the National Nutrition Center, and the Albert Cecil Graham Development Center. These initial reports from the polyclinics indicated no damage to buildings, equipment, or vehicles. Environmental Health conducted visits in Oistins and Hastings area, and full environmental health assessments, including food establishments, were being conducted in all catchments from July 2nd, 2024, and continuing. The Environmental Health Department maintains a presence at the Grantley Adams International Airport. There were no issues reported to the Animal Control or Environmental Sanitation Unit, and the Bridgetown Port Health staff continued any major assessments of the facility as required. Shelter management. 33 Category 1 shelters were activated on June 30th. They accommodated a total of 443 individuals across various shelters, with the highest numbers being registered at Lloyd Erskine Sandifer Center, that made 87, and the Commonwealth School, which had 43. Minor issues were reported in the aftermath, and these will be treated to internally by the Ministry of Education. Government installations. No major damage reports were received for inland public sector government buildings as of July 5th. The Property Management Unit of the Ministry of Housing and Lands and Maintenance, which managed a total of 65 public service accommodations and 25 state-owned office accommodations, has advised that except for what has been detailed here, no other damage was reported concerning government accommodation. The BDF. The BDF experienced infrastructural damage, particularly at the Barbados Coast Guard, due to intense storm surges. The BCGS Pelican faced extensive and significant damage due to sea surges, impacting operational capabilities. Extensive damage to piers, small boats, and essential facilities at the Coast Guard base rendered some areas unusable. All damage will be quantified, and a plan of action to effect repairs will be developed and implemented. Despite challenges, the BDF successfully utilized drone teams to provide rapid situation assessments and coordinated with various national agencies to address immediate threats and restore essential services. On Saturday, June 29th, 251 tons of garbage was cleared from across the country. Prior to the storm, on the day of the earliest impact, 251 tons of garbage was cleared from across the country. While on Sunday, June 30th, 2024, an additional 162 tons was cleared, despite having to close to allow refueling or charging and securing equipment prior to the passage of the system. Once the all-clear was announced, assessments were conducted to ensure that all was well at the various locations within the organization after the passage of the system. The Sanitation Service Authority worked with the assistance of the Barbados Defense Force and the Ministry of Transport and Works to remove debris from the affected areas between Oistins and Hastings, and later assisted with removal of materials from the Bridgetown Fisheries Complex as well as the Princess Alice Highway, and that is opposite Treppers Way. The EPD, Environmental Protection Department. The Environmental Protection Unit reported that there was a strong diesel odor in the Bridgetown Fisheries Complex, as is to be expected, resulting from the sunken vessels that release fuel into an inner basin in the complex. The odor is expected to dissipate by way of action, wind, and sunlight. The team at the EPD will continue to monitor the diesel spill in the Bridgetown Fisheries Complex and liaise with all relevant agencies and departments to keep abreast of developments. Ministry of Agriculture and the agricultural sector. No significant damages to the Ministry of Agriculture and the agricultural sector installations. Of note, the Animal Nutrition Unit reported a small Rubbermaid shed about 10 by 10 feet was destroyed. The Animal Nutrition Unit, the Blackbelly Sheep Program, and the Green Livestock Research Station reported no injury to animals. The Central Agronomic Research Station, there was damage to pawpaw, 20% of a quarter-acre field, and a plantain crop, 20% of the quarter-acre field. Extension officers at the BADMC and the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security commenced initial damage assessment in the farming community. The main damage was banana crops. We have been informed that some 35 acres were affected. The tourism sector. The Ministry of Tourism and International Transport initially reported that there were no adverse reports of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association resulting from the passage of Beryl. The BHTA and its associates, namely Intimate Hotels of Barbados, Barbados Entrepreneurship and Tourism Association, and the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc., maintained contact throughout the passage of Beryl, and no damage to property had been reported in the early stages after the passage of Beryl. The BHTA later conducted an additional audit of the coastal and inland damage that members received from their properties and businesses. The percentage of respondents who suffered damage because of the passage of Hurricane Beryl are accommodation, 73.5%, villas, 9.4%, other vessels, i.e. catamarans, 1.6%, and restaurants, 15.7%. 80% of respondents will not be closing for operation, and 10% will be implementing a partial closure in instances where parts of their operation were damaged but repairable in the short term for operation. 10% will be closing fully due to severe damage to their businesses. The period for partial and full closures will be 1 to 6 weeks. As a result of these closures, 19% of the respondents indicated that they will have staff layoffs, impacting over 290 members across the industry. We await the submission of the greater details of damage to the Department of Emergency Management. Ministry of Transport and Works. As part of the NEOC, MTW personnel were on hand at the Operations Center to record any reported incidents from the public. Those reports were passed to senior technicians at the ministry's depots to action once the all-clear was given. While there were many areas that required cleanup after Hurricane Beryl, as indicated earlier, the three that stand out because of storm surge activity were Highway 7, this is along Hastings, the Bridgetown Port, and the Oistins area. The Transport Board successfully executed all of its activities relating to the path of Hurricane Beryl. That included initiating and carrying out the smooth shutdown of bus services across the island by 8 p.m. on Sunday, June 30th. Resuming services on Monday, July 1st after the all-clear was announced. Allocating and assigning buses to the Barbados Defense Force for their use before the arrival of Hurricane Beryl. And overall, the board's framework and policies to handle these critical activities were completed within the projected timelines. The Barbados Police Service. The Barbados Police Service reports it did not encounter any major issues before, during, or after the passage of Hurricane Beryl. The major issue, the one issue worthy of note from a law enforcement and policing perspective, is the disregard by members of the public of the notice to stay indoors until the all-clear has been given. When the operational all-clear was given, sir, we went on the outside of the building to send up the drones to do the initial inspections. And from being on the outside of the building, where the wind was still gusting, we could hear people doing donuts and doing stunts and the cars screeching somewhere in the vicinity of the DEM. And I want to say, we made this point a number of times, sir, through the media, and I want to thank the media for its assistance in getting the messaging out. But persons who venture out before the all-clear is given are exercising their rights in an exceedingly selfish way. Because the reality remains that if something happens to you, some emergency responder is going to have to come out before the all-clear, putting themselves in danger to assist you when you should not have been out in the first place. It is worthy of note, sir, that the major issue by the police with the entire passage of Hurricane Beryl was the disregard by members of the public of the notice to stay indoor until the all-clear has been given. I think enough has been said there. A word to the wise is sufficient. Barbados Fire Service. For the passage of Hurricane Beryl, the Barbados Fire Service implemented an internal disaster plan, which included but was not limited to the following. Fuel tanks were filled to capacity, vehicles were topped up, Shutters where applicable were checked and put in place. The Port and Bridgetown Fire Station personnel and appliances were relocated to the Arch Hall Fire Station and the Worthing Fire Stations, respectively. This was done because it was felt that the port station would have been vulnerable to extreme tidal activity, and the vehicles at the Bridgetown Station would be vulnerable to the high winds, rainfall, and flying debris. There was no reported damage at any of the stations except for the flood waters in the Bridgetown Port encroaching on the reception and the back corridor of the Bridgetown Port Fire Station. The impact was not significant and it was cleaned by members of the service and reoccupied. The service responded to 2 incidents during the period when the wind speed was below storm force of 40 miles per hour, a house fire at Sergeant's Village, Christchurch, and an activated alarm at Wildy, St. Michael. The service will constantly reevaluate its standard operating procedures to ensure that these are appropriate for the evolving conditions. The Barbados Met Services report on Hurricane Beryl. Barbados was impacted by Hurricane Beryl from 8 p.m. on Sunday, 30th of June, until 2 p.m. on Monday, 1st of July, 2024. The BMS radar imagery showed the center of Beryl passing approximately 150 kilometers to the south of Barbados between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. on 1st July 2024. At that time, Beryl was a Category 3 hurricane with maximum sustained speeds of 120 miles per hour. Sustained storm force winds from the system generated large swells, resulting in a storm surge, particularly on the southern and western coastlines of Barbados. In Barbados, sustained storm force winds were observed from 12:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. on 1st of July 2024, with a peak in wind speeds from approximately 2 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. During this time, maximum wind gusts recorded at Charnock's Christchurch, that is at the BMS headquarters, was 68.4 miles per hour, and that was at 6:03 a.m. And it must be noted, sir, that Charnock's is actually considered a sheltered area. The BMS was unable to measure sea swells during the passage of Beryl. However, the department was able to approximate the onset of increased wave activity near shore using the BMS water level sensors. Data from the water level sensors located at the BDF Coast Guard and Oystins Jetty showed increased wave activity from approximately 2 a.m. on 1st July. Meanwhile, data from the water level sensors on Spikestown Jetty showed this increased activity at 9 a.m. on 1st July. The department is unable to verify the height of these waves or quantify how hazardous the wave activity observed was. During the passage of the system, these 3 sensors were compromised because of wave activity, and therefore the department does not have data regarding the cessation of the increased wave activity. Rainfall activity during the passage of Beryl for Barbados was minimal, with a maximum of ½ inch of rainfall recorded from our 3D printed automatic weather stations across the island. And I must say, sir, we have a lot of them, and just a plug in relation to Met Services, these 3D stations are all actually printed, designed, printed, and made at the Met headquarters in Charnock. The Barbados Meteorological Services monitored the progress of the system internally and began updates to the Ministry of Home Affairs, stakeholders, and the public when global numerical models projected the system to develop into a tropical cyclone that could have impacts on Barbados. Initial statements were issued by the department on the 26th of June 2024 at 10 a.m. At this time, the system was a strong tropical wave, which was projected by all local and international numerical weather guidance and official forecasts from the National Hurricane Center to be a tropical storm when reaching Barbados on the 30th of June to the 1st of July. So initially, from the 26th of June, the projection was that the system was going to pass or impact Barbados as a mere tropical storm. And this is not just from Met, this is from everybody. Global modeling suggested that when it passed closest to Barbados, it was going to be tropical storm force. The BMS continued to issue daily statements regarding the progress and development of the system, highlighting the possible impacts for hazardous sea conditions, strong winds, and excessive rainfall. A small craft and high surf warning was issued on Friday, 28th of June, 48 hours in advance of expected marine impacts for Barbados. At that time, the department forecast swell heights of up to 4 meters in open water, 4 meters or 13 feet in open water for the marine area of Barbados. As the system developed, updated projections on Friday evening showed that the system could develop into a Category 1 hurricane, and a hurricane watch was subsequently issued for Barbados at 5 a.m. on 29th of June, 48 hours in advance of the projected time of the center passing near Barbados. A hurricane warning was issued for Barbados at 5 p.m. on the same 29th of June, 36 hours in advance of the projected time of the center passing near Barbados. At the 11 a.m. update for the National Hurricane Center on 29th of June, Beryl was forecasted to become a Category 3 hurricane by the time it passed Barbados. As a result, the department revised its marine forecast for swell heights to 8 meters or 26 feet on Saturday afternoon. After the passage of Beryl, the hurricane warning was discontinued at 2 p.m. on 1st July 2024. Barbados Statistical Services. Our Barbados Statistical Services received 261 incident reports from the public, including 40 extracted priority cases with damage to dwelling units, to the roof of dwelling units. Damage assessment team from the BSS with the Ministry of Housing and Social Care assessors started to investigate the initial 40 cases after the all-clear was given. Following the impact of Hurricane Beryl on the island, the housing and rehabilitation efforts are being undertaken by the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance, the National Housing Corporation, and the Urban and Rural Development Commissions. Utilizing the incident reports from the Barbados Statistical Service, technical assessments commenced shortly after the all-clear was declared. To date, a total of 55 reports of house damage were received from 7 parishes: Christchurch 19, St. George 7, St. James 1, St. John 3, St. Michael 15, St. Philip 7, and St. Thomas 3. Thus far, there are 6 reports of major house damage where portions of roof were torn off. Our teams have started a process towards repairs and will continue their efforts to repair these homes and build resilience into the housing stock. I hope that with this synopsis of the work before, during, and after the passage of Beryl, you would appreciate that the task is continuous for the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Department of Emergency Management, and the teams that work assiduously during the hurricane season to ensure the safety of us all. It is not easy. While we continue our assessments, our cleanup, and our rebuilding, we also need to spare a thought for our Caribbean neighbors. Those who have already endured the strike of a stronger Hurricane Beryl, such as our sister islands of Grenada, including Carriacou and Marod, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, in particular, Union Island and Canouan, Jamaica, Cayman Islands, and our Central American islands neighbors such as Mexico. And sir, if we are all following, Texas took a massive blow from Beryl, which had weakened to a tropical storm and then gone back up to Category 1 before striking Texas with record amounts of flooding. And it is expected to reach as far, I understand, as Canada. We remind Barbadians, however, that however badly we've been hit, we can always assist those who may be in as bad or worse predicament. Let me remind you all of the account which has been opened. There's a Fisherman Benevolent Fund, and there's a fund to support those who suffered damage in Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Let us not forget to donate where we can to both accounts. We must, at this time and in this time, be our brothers' keepers. The reality is, sir, that at some point in time, one of these systems will actually impact us. And I ask all who are monitoring and all to remember the fear that we felt 9 days ago when all projections were for direct hit on Barbados. And with every turn south that we breathed a sigh of relief, that took it closer and closer to somebody else. Let's just bear that in mind. On behalf, sir, of the government of Barbados, I wish to thank all who worked tirelessly and who continue to work to make the best possible decisions in the interests of the Barbadian people and all who share this island with us. I also wish to thank Barbadians, our media personnel, and visitors for their support and understanding in these challenging times, including, of course, you, my colleagues. Our teams were helped significantly by many Barbadians who stepped up to lend assistance in the route clearing exercise once the all clear was given. I also wish to commend all those who ably assisted as we maintained the commitment which we made to the world over a year ago to stage the finals of the ICC T20 Cricket World Cup, and did so successfully less than 48 hours before we experienced the first impacts of Beryl, while at the same time preparing for and managing the process to keep Barbadians safe during the impact from the storm. Sir, July is here, and the season has just started. We are continuing the hard work to ensure that we remain prepared for a season which we had declared unofficially to be started in May, but which has certainly begun with a vengeance. As we prepare to face these next 5 months of the 2024 season that is expected to bring above average hurricane activity, we call on all Barbadians to continue their preparations and to monitor all the information provided by the various services. Be prepared and stay prepared. We have a long way still to go. I'm obliged, sir.
Revert to government business, sir.
Wait. Ready.
Honourable Acting Leader of Government Business.
Sir, with this, we have come to the end of our business for the day. I would like to move, sir, the suspension of the House until the adjournment of the House until 1:30 p.m. That's next Tuesday, sir. What's the date? 1:30 in the afternoon next Tuesday, sir. The 16th, 1:30 p.m. the 16th of
The question is that this Honourable Chamber be adjourned until Tuesday, the 16th day of July 2024 at 1:30 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This Honourable Chamber stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 16th day of July 2024 at 1:30 p.m.